Hello everyone, I'm Gemma Star and welcome to Heart Warriors. This is a series I've been inspired and guided to do thanks to my energetic connection with Kittridge, which is the sacred masculine site in Central Australia, very close to Uluru, which is the sacred feminine site. What I'm doing is giving a platform to men to speak man to man about their experience, about their journey into the heart. What does that look like? What insights, tools, practices have they acquired along the way that they can now share with other men who are walking that path? Today's guest is a man called Robert Kittridge, and he is a behaviour alchemist over there in the States. So it's my greatest pleasure to welcome Robert to the show. Hello, Robert Kittridge. Welcome to Heart Warriors.
Hello, I'm excited to be here.
That's so awesome. You're over there in the States. Whereabout are you?
So I live in a place called Colorado Springs, Colorado, right at the foot of Pikes Peak in the Rocky Mountains.
Oh, sounds wonderful. Okay, let's start with letting people know about the man you are today. What adjectives would you use to describe the man sitting in front of us?
I love how you phrase that, the man I am today. The first thing that comes to mind is authentic, loving, intuitive, nurturing. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Let's find out now how you got here. So can you take us back to a point in your childhood that was maybe the most challenging for you, and tell us how old you were and what was happening?
Whew, wow. Well, I'll tell you, Gemma, my childhood was very dysfunctional. I grew up in a very alcoholic, emotionally, physically, mentally abusive household. My stepfather was a Vietnam veteran, undiagnosed PTSD, very, very angry. So for most of my life, I pretty much stuffed and hid who I was because I never knew what I could be. Let's just say I wasn't allowed to be happy. I wasn't allowed to be sad. I wasn't allowed to. And I know now that the things I knew back then that I was shamed for or put down for was really my truth trying to stand up. But as a kid and in that childhood, and I'll tell you, you're asking for there's a time, and probably somewhere in the age of, I'm still really not clear, somewhere in the age of 7 or 8 years old, trying to break up a fight between my stepfather and my mom, and there was plenty. And he threw me across the room and stood over me and started yelling about why did I keep moving? Why did I keep doing what I was doing? Because I'd never make a difference. Now, as an 8-year-old, you don't have that faculty of reasoning yet. And so, it's like, well, I wonder if he's correct about that. I just took it in. I just made up a story. And unconsciously have flowed that through my relationships. I spent 30 years in the fire service trying to rescue people and trying to prove myself, trying to be the star. All of that came from that childhood, and there was many more situations that is now coming to mind, but a lot of those I didn't remember. I mean, the mind has a great way to protect us by stuffing those memories, and they're just now starting to come out for me to really to be able to bring in, one, let go of if need be, but two, I'm using a lot of those now to bring out this masculinity. What does healthy, and I'm working on terms, right? I don't like toxic, I don't like healthy, but what does this divine masculinity really feel and look like in the world? And all of these things that I've encountered most of them were not good examples of that. Most of
Sure.
the men in my life, most of that masculine energy was not a, let's just say, a healthy or divine energy.
Okay, so one, I'd like to go back to that 7-year-old Robert, and how did he cope, and what tools did he use to get himself out of that situation of feeling so much emotional pain?
Well, I've been on this personal growth journey for about, well, since 1982. So what is that, 40 years or whatever that is, right? I didn't have any tools. And, growing up in that household was very much our life was a secret, because you didn't talk about what happened inside, because outside it had to look great.
Mm.
So the tools I had were very limited because I couldn't share what I was going through. I couldn't, my best friend in high school knew. He was about the only one really that knew that. Now, these tools came to me here really in 2019. That's when I was really handed a great set of tools to start to cope with this. Throughout my years, I've tried to find the answers in coaches, in programs, in books, in podcasts, and all of those are great, but they never were the tools that I needed to really step into that piece of who I am as a truth, right? Who I am, that is that divine masculine for me, right? For me. And that's where the tools have started to come over, is just these last 4 or 5 years.
Okay, so we're going to dedicate a lot of the program to exploring those tools, but I just want to get a brief insight into your past before you found these tools. So now, can you jump to a place in your adulthood and tell us what was your deepest, darkest moment? What was going on there? And then we'll use that point to start your rise up into discovering your tools and go from there.
Well, I love that, Gemma. Wow. I've had some pretty deep, dark moments. I've been married and divorced 3 times. I've been fired from jobs. I've been, as I think about it now, that time I got fired from a career was probably a turning point for me, but one that didn't stick, because it was really something simple that I, quote, lied about, which for me, dishonesty has been this ongoing theme for me. And actually, as recent as 3 or 4 months ago, it actually ended a relationship for me, because I lied. But it was one of those things that was running in the background, right? I didn't even know what I didn't know. And that piece of it has been a consistency for me to be inconsistent, and has kept me from being authentic and truthful who I am. And again, because of my childhood, I had to lie. As a matter of fact, there was a memory that came up here not too long ago of again, that same age, maybe 10, 12, that I was sick a lot. And I now know why, because I wasn't, right? The body is at dis-ease, creates dis-ease, right? And this memory popped up of going to the doctor, and I had ulcers. And the doctor going through and doing the stuff, and him looking at my mom and asking, is there anything at home we should be concerned about? And her just a straight face and authentic going, no, everything's great. As a kid, you're going, really? And that piece of, there's been lots of dark moments, my friend.
Let's explore this, because this is a really common theme you've touched on here. And I'd really like the men and ultimately the women watching to be able to relate your experience to themselves and to understand the way out of it. So you touched on the ultimate goal being authenticity. And I would totally relate to that with my own journey. And I find that when we are authentic, that's when we can live the highest version of ourselves. So many of us grow up in this family where we're not allowed to be ourselves. On reflection, how did you get yourself out of that inauthenticity to understanding the authentic man that you're becoming? And where do the lies, like, I want to understand how you stop yourself telling the lies to be inauthentic. Like, that takes a lot of courage. And even for you to come on here and share that with us, Robert, I'm very grateful. So I want to take this opportunity for you to talk to other men. How do they shift that?
Well, let's first start with a statement you said is, I don't believe for this is an understanding, because most of the time understanding, we go to our mind, right? And our mind will never give us those answers. So for us as humans, it's going to our body. How do I feel about, and for me, lying, being dishonest, being defensive, and I think about it now, felt comfortable, right? I mean, it did, because I was used to it. There was what I call seeds of recognition, or cells of recognition there. Like, I knew lying was the way to get my way. Lying was the way to stay out of trouble. Lying was I don't know, you draw the points. So the first thing I would say is, start as a man and as a woman, because I love this, both sides of it, is that, how does it feel? When you're voicing or you're doing something, how does it feel? And our body knows what's correct for us. Now, on top of that, then comes all this conditioning, right, that we've been exposed to. I work with a modality called human design, and that shows us where our conditioning has possibilities. And it was amazing for me. And just this awareness just this week is that, for me, how much of my life was controlled by fears instead of my emotional clarity. So I was fearful of the future. I was fearful of the past. I was fearful of anxiety. I was fearful of responsibility. So I'm making all of these decisions following those, which is the mind, versus the body that was like, no, this is you. Yeah. And for me, it's taken a huge emotional event. And I'll tell you, right, 3 marriages, 3 divorces, lots of emotional, but there was this emotional tragedy. And Richard Rudd says this, is that for you to fully commit to healing, there has to be this emotional impact that just shakes you to your core. And I had that 3 months ago. I lied in a relationship, which was a huge thing for her, and it ended our relationship. And that was, for me, the time to step back and say, no more, right? No more. But for me, a lot of my design, a lot of my conditioning is unconscious. So it was really, how do I dig that up? And I've done that through a couple different ways, but how do I dig that up? And one of them was I put my entire life, my gene keys, all my everything up on a board in my office, so that I could walk by and just watch it. I could walk by and look at it. I could walk by and dig into it. I could walk by and examine it and say, what now do I choose to do with this? And for me, that's how we move forward. It's not about changing. It's about choosing. It's about, what is it we want to choose on who we want to be.
I love that. Okay, so personally, it's not a modality that I've delved into. So would you like to explain what this modality is, how you came to find it, and it's the fundamentals of the tool that you use?
Sure. It's called Human Design. It was created in the 80s by a gentleman called Ra Uru Hu. And it was a download to him. He was on a sabbatical, and theory is that it was Mother Earth gave him this modality. And it combines chakras, it combines Chinese I Ching, combines astrology, and combines the Jewish Kabbalah. And my take on it, the way that I look at it, is it is my perfect design as created by God in the image of. And that allows me to really step into and examine this thing we're taught about separateness, like we're separate from God. We're not, we're one and we're whole. And the big awareness for me through it is that I'm perfect. And trust me, through my life, and I think knowing some of you, your life is we're not told that. If anything, we're told how we're faulted, or and again, the conditioning that men have gone through, right, as men, is an atrocity. I think it is, and for men to start to stand up a lot of times, and I've been here, and again, some of the people I brought into my life, I've attracted to keep me down. And this has been part of my growth is who am I now surrounding myself with that enhances where do I want to go and my design and my perfection versus enhances my conditioning. And it'll go both ways, right? So human modality is just, it's a science of differentiation. It shows us how we're unique, designed, and perfect. And that's, for me, has allowed me to look at the mechanical side of it. In other words, I've been able to let go of the judgment. So this whole part about being dishonest, and I mean, trust me, there's a lot of judgment around that for me because I've been able to draw the dots of everywhere I've been. But now I got it. It's just, and I kind of use, right? It just is. Now I get to choose what to do with it. And that's the power that I'm stepping into to start to bring this pure, my divine masculinity out into the world. And I'm helping others do that same.
That's beautiful. I'd like to go back and touch on, can you articulate, expand on what you were saying about masculine conditioning? One for maybe men to understand it through words that they might not be able to articulate themselves. And secondly, for us women to be able to understand it from a man's perspective.
Yeah, well, let me share a story. I mean, when I was probably 12, 13 years old, I was a, quote, troubled child. My mom and my stepdad would send me to a farm, a relative, eastern Colorado, and it was a farm, right? Which is a whole lot different than living in the city. And I mean, I remember my first thing is, here's a calf, here's how you feed it, it better not die, right? I mean, that was the parameters. And I look back and I hated that time, but I also know it's made me who I am today in my value set, my work ethic, that kind of thing. So the man I stayed with, I lived with my great grandmother, my great uncle, and his wife. And when he died, it really upset me because it really was the first, and again, reflecting back on it now, I didn't know it then, but he was really one of the first good examples of masculinity, right, that I had in my life. Mm-hmm. So in the church, at the funeral, and I mean, this guy was well known, it was a packed house, I'm crying. I'm a 13, I'm bawling. His son comes over, grabs me out of the pew in the middle of the service, takes me to the back of the church and starts to lecture me how stop crying because grown men don't cry.
How old were you?
12, 13 years old.
Right. Yeah.
And what did I do? When my mom died in 95, I gave the eulogy and still didn't cry. And it's still something for me that's a conditioning piece that as I'm embracing my emotions now, and I'm an emotional being, that's my authority under human design, is to make my choices and decisions with emotional clarity. For most of my life, I've stuffed my emotions. And it's been made through conditioning. So now it's like, you know, I mean, I'll all of a sudden sit watching a TV show. What was it I was watching one day? I came home from something, I don't remember. Next thing I know, I'm like, and I'm starting to cry. And of course, the first conditioning comes up is, what are you doing? It's just being able to just let yourself do that. And that's something I'm still man, sometimes day by day, still working on. And a friend of mine, right, she believes in crying is that cathartic washing of the soul. And I know for me, I'm still struggling with that. So that's part of a man's conditioning.
Yeah.
Or as a child, you're grown up to play with play with trucks, not dolls, or you play with, I remember when I was playing with GI Joes, the old GI Joes back when I was a kid, and the originals is being made fun of for playing with dolls, but they were masculine dolls, right? I mean, it was a soldier.
Yeah.
But societies, and especially back then, had an entirely different view on that masculine versus feminine, and it still does, but it's getting better. So that's some of that conditioning that men are exposed to.
Yeah, and I always find it interesting that little boys are told not to play with dolls on the whole, but then we expect men to be perfect fathers and hold the babies and feed the babies and get up in the night and work with the babies. So there is that discrepancy there. So do you think that all men are emotional beings, or are there varying degrees of emotion, natural emotion in men? And how do they start to explore their emotions that maybe have been suppressed for however many decades?
Well, let's step one level up. All human beings are emotional beings. I mean, that's how we connect. We connect through words, but come on, you and I know that you and I feel each other, and you're across the world just through the emotions of your writings, right? I feel that. I read it, but and this is what I love about your work, is the authenticity and the emotional piece you bring to the world. Now, so human beings are emotional beings. We are created to connect through emotions. But then we're taught, right, to not be emotional. And there's a difference, I think, by having and being in touch with your emotions and being emotional. And there's some nuances there with it, because when I work with speakers and I work with TEDx speakers, they're so afraid of being emotional on stage. They're actually detached.
Yeah.
But it's the emotion that connects us. So for me as a man, I look back now and know how detached I was from my relationships. They were craving emotions. They wanted my emotions. I had no idea how to share my emotions without shame, without guilt, without frustration, without worrying about being put down or laughed at. All of that conditioning that I experienced through my life. So what did I do? Sucked it in. I was strong. Be strong. It's okay. You can be strong and powerful and still have and be in touch with your emotions. That's the beauty of that divine masculine.
How did you learn to do that, Robert? How did you learn to start expressing your emotions once they had been suppressed for so long? Can you remember those early days of you being aware that this was the path that you wanted to walk? What tools did you use to start, I imagine, slowly expressing your emotions, testing the waters with women, maybe becoming a bit more vulnerable? Can you walk us through that?
Well, again, Gemma, that's happened for me over the last 4 years. I did not have that toolbox until I was exposed to human design. And what that did was show me my mechanics. How do I process emotions? It's just mechanics. It's like your car. It works a certain way. And that's the beauty of that for me, is to go, okay, then it was like, okay, so what does feeling feel like? Because I have suppressed that. So exposing myself, one, I've done some plant-based medicine work that allowed me to bring up emotions. Two, surrounding myself with people that were a safe space to be able to express emotions and not be criticized, put down, make fun of, blah, 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 blah. right? I think about the time in the fire service. Again, I went into being a firefighter, rescuing people. But at the time I was in the fire service, we were taught to not be emotional. Like it didn't matter. You come back from a call doing open chest heart massage on somebody from a traffic accident, from a drunken blah blah, and you were just supposed to go get some coffee and go, okay. Thankfully, that's changing in the emergency services world, right? There's ways now to, we didn't have ways to process that. You couldn't sit around the kitchen table because if you started sharing, the culture was put that away. Yeah. And I did. So then to start bringing it out is like, whoa, what is this? And now it's like, and again, the friend of mine, and this gal is an emotions advocate. She is just beautiful. Is for her, its emotions are not good or bad. Yeah, they just are. It's what do we do with them? And that's her journey, is because people look at anger as bad. No, anger is an emotion. Joy is an emotion. And it's just different ends of the scale of the continuum. But we suppress these, and we're always supposed to be this. But we can't do that, because and this is what I know, is suppressing the anger also suppress the love. Because you can't suppress one without, how you do one thing is how you do everything when it comes to emotions. Right. And so now it's like being like, and for me, in my design, I'm a defined solar plex, which means I'm defined emotionally, emotional clarity, emotional intelligence, but I have what's called an emotional wave, and I have 2 of them. So it's like, whoa, and just being like, what am I feeling right now? And then honoring it. Maybe it's, you know what? I'm going to go on the couch for an hour. Maybe it's, I don't know. But instead of looking like I have to do something with it, or the way I'm feeling is bad, or I'm down, so I'm not, it's just being with those emotions and then nurturing them and feeling how that you can then express them constructively.
Robert, is this human design sort of a one-off reading, or is this something that an ongoing process that, like, if someone wanted to explore this, because as I said, I've heard of it, but I haven't been in it. So once you get your initial reading, is that it? Like you say, you refer to that and you become aware of your own, bring that awareness and relate it to yourself. So is it a one-off thing?
Well, I'll go back to your original question. Is it a one-off or is it a continuing? The answer is yes. For me, the one-off was like, holy cow. I mean, it was like it opened up who I am. And I wanted to go deeper. So for me, I worked with a coach. And then when I saw such the difference it made in me, I knew I wanted to bring it to others. And again, that's part of my design, is universalization, bringing to the world knowledge, wisdom. And so I went through certification. So I do an overview for folks, a reading. It's just an overview, high level, type, design, strategy, authority, because I believe if we can step into our strategy and authority. So for me, type is a generator. There's 4 types. My strategy is to wait to respond. All my life, and especially as an entrepreneur, I've been, no, if you want it, you got to go get it. A lot of the mindset stuff that's out there being taught is, what is it? If it's going to be, it's up to me, right? Which is all good stuff, but it may not match your design. It may not match your strategy. And then, so for that, and that's kind of the first reading. That's kind of that, here you go. It's a toolbox. Yeah. And then for those that want to go deeper, then I'm able to take them deeper. And basically what they do is they bring their life to me. I bring human design, and we see how it aligns or not. And then give them the choice to do. And that's, Gemma, that's what it's all about, is choice. I mean, yeah. Choice is the one thing God has given us, God, source, spirit, whatever you believe, has given us that is not given any other creature, right? My tree, I'm looking at this beautiful tree, sumac out back. It has no other way to be but a sumac. you and I can decide, can choose, and create. I don't like the word change, create what we want to be. So when it comes to the masculine, again, in this world, for me to step up to what masculine means for me, and that's, I think, the where I'm struggling with right now with divine masculine, divine feminine, is I don't want it to become another way to homogenize us, make us all the same.
Yeah.
I think let's come up with what it feels like, and then how do you, Sam, how do you bring it up, and how do you, Jim, bring it up? And the other thing for me is I don't want to see this divine masculine and divine feminine. I'm working with another colleague on this. Is I don't want it to be another way to separate us, because we have it all. And that was for me a big awareness when I looked at my human design. I'm more feminine energy than masculine energy.
Okay.
And that explains so much about why all my life I have been so nurturing, why all my life I didn't fit in this, this masculine, misogynistic, the fire service or sports or those kind of things, because it wasn't correct for me. Nothing wrong with it.
Right.
Just wasn't correct for me. And that's where I am, is let's figure out what this for you as a man, that divine masculine versus a program that creates divine masculinity, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense.
Totally.
But,
I mean,
yeah.
we're aware of, masculine, feminine polarity, but I don't believe the natural masculine state is to be in the top 10% of that masculinity. Everyone has got their perfectly healthy, divine place to be when we come into our authenticity, which is when we've healed our wounds and we can be our perfect natural self, finding our joy and peace. That's exactly where we're meant to be on the scale. And until then, we're lying and we're being dishonest to try and be someone that we're not. Would you
We're
agree?
trying to fit in. We're trying to fit in, right? And even and that is, as human beings, all the way back to being a child, right? Our desire is to fit in, to be accepted, to be loved.
Survival.
So we will crush our own identity in order to fit in.
That's right. Yeah.
And then we carry that story into adulthood, trying to, and for me, I'm not about fitting in. I'm a part of my design is called a heretic hermit. I'm designed to call stuff out. I don't fit in. And, a story with that is I used to be part of the John Maxwell team and still am, but I'm not actively part of it. And they develop speakers and develop coaches. And, there's this, what does a professional speaker coach on stage look like? And that's suit, tie. And I did that, but it never felt correct. And now I show up like this. I mean, this is me. You want me to speak? This is how I'm showing up on stage. You want me to cut? This is how I'm showing up. And if that's not correct for you, that's fine. I still love you, right? I still love you. But it's moving into that truth and being secure and standing in that truth regardless. And again, that's tough for some people because of their conditioning, but regardless of what the world thinks or feels or says.
Yeah. It's so powerful just to be able to be who we want to be. As long as, we're not hurting anyone, we're not, it's just, that is the ultimate point of self-empowerment. Robert, can we go back to your relationships? And you said that you'd been married 3 times. In retrospect now, what would you say was the theme in a nutshell of why those relationships didn't last?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think it was because I think it was because I have this ability to attract, right? I have this ability to attract. That's a generator, is there's this attraction. But what I didn't have the ability was to be authentic. And so I mean, it comes back to that. I was not this authentic, horrible husband. Honest to God, I was not a good father. I'm just now at 62 years old, starting to repair the relationships with my kids that I know that I was the one that, right? But for years, I blamed my parents for being who they were, and that's why I was, and so on. And I just repeated that. So I don't know if there's one thing, but I think I could bring it back to that theme of just I wasn't being who I was. And I think the people in my life that have been in my relationships have seen me who I am. And I know this relationship that just ended, she absolutely saw me who I am. But what destroyed it was I did not stay, or I was not being that. And I went and reverted back to what was familiar, right? The lying, the dishonesty, the defense.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. What else have you got to say about maybe men? Let's go back to this polarity discussion where what's the mainstream theme of the polarity awareness community is that men have to be a certain way. Okay, well, maybe we can agree the masculine energy does lead, it is grounded, it is well, definitely authentic, but it doesn't have to be forceful, does it? It doesn't have to be controlling or demanding. And I know they're more on the unhealthy scale, but what I'm trying to get to with this long-winded question is, can you talk to men who do feel that they are maybe towards the more feminine end of within the masculine frame? Am I being
Yep, you're good. Let me give me here to kind of process this, because I got what you're trying to ask, and I'm trying to stir it up here. Again, the world, society has an idea of what man should be. The confusion is that's not clear what that should be. And you know, I don't deal in shoulds, right? I mean, I think we should all over ourselves, right? That's how condition is language. Should we do that? I don't know. Do you choose to? Does it feel correct? And I think the importance of this, and I'll come back to us finding our truth, you finding your truth. Now, for you, what does it take to be in a relationship that's somebody that has that masculine or feminine energy, both for you and I to be in a relationship? Whether that's a romantic relationship, whether that's a work relationship, doesn't matter. For us to take a box of what it is and say, okay, I need to be that to be this, that's where we move into that homogenization piece. And luckily, that's falling away, right? There's more and more people going, that doesn't feel right. But again, depending on your design and the pressure you may feel from others, you're going to go back, or may go back, to what's comfortable. And part of that is attracting that that you need. So this last relationship for me was beautiful, was loving, and it was also right. I mean, we were perfect mirrors for each other's trauma. I mean, we just were. And it was great because we were there, but then we weren't. And then it was but for me, it has absolutely revealed all of that stuff for me now to go work on and you know, to go dance with, to bring up for me. And that's the piece of this. Each individual is their own journey. And it's how do you find that truth and stand in that? And when you are, you will attract those that align with it. If you aren't, you will attract with those that are aligned with that. That's the law of attraction. Yes. You attract what you feel, you attract what you're putting out there, you attract what you believe. You know, the women that are in these continuous abusive relationships. Well, what do you believe about yourself? right? Men that attract, I mean, what do you believe about yourself? It's not about knowing, it's about believing. It's about knowing, body conscious, not intellectual knowing. It's the belief. So I'm not sure if that answered that question,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah,
about us discovering and finding our truth, and then finding those that we are in coherence with, right? That we are in that with. And maybe that's different for a romantic partner versus a collaborative partner versus because, I think the world puts so much stress on us right now to find the one.
yeah.
And I don't know as humans if we can do that. Because, I'm getting something from you reading your writings. There's like, I've told you that. There's just a coherence and authenticity with that. But that doesn't take away from somebody else that doesn't do that, because I've got something with them. And I think that's this piece of masculinity is we don't have to be the one all for everything.
Yeah.
We don't.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's when we step into
State.
power. That's when we step into power. And for me, what I'm starting to realize is that power actually is coming through intimacy and transparency.
Yes.
That's been the
Transparency.
that's been the breakthrough I've had here lately is, and again, that's my spiritual intelligence. And through Gene Keys, the shadow is dishonesty, but the gift is intimacy. And the city, right, the highest level of enlightenment is transparency.
Definitely.
And intimacy for me means, see into me.
Yes.
And that's, I think, that's that relationship. But we're afraid to do that. We're afraid. We hide that stuff.
So
That was kind of rambling, but I hope that answered your question.
yeah, no, thank you. Lovely. Thank you, Robert. Yes. So what I want to get into, so the human design keys, they give you an awareness, but we also need practical day-to-day tools, practices. Like for me, I got into meditation. I don't meditate anymore, and yoga and, a whole heap of different things that I might not do today, but they definitely served a purpose in the last 5 years on my journey. So what practical daily things did you incorporate into your life that made a difference?
First part is being aware. I mean, it was amazing when I looked at it, how unconscious I was in my life.
Right.
I'm seriously, how much I was run by, and a lot of my design is in the unconscious. And, Carl Jung said, until we make the unconscious conscious, it'll rule life, and we call it fate. And so for me, the first part is just like being aware. Am I pushing in? Am I forcing myself in? I've got a great idea and I've got those. Do I now need to speak it? Or stopping and pausing? And again, for me, pause, wait to respond. Part of my design is I have an open throat center. And that the not self of that, the out of alignment with that, is always trying to be the star. So I've got lots of wisdom. I've got lots of abilities. I've got lots of intuitive nurturing, but that doesn't mean I have to express it all the time. And so for me, it really was my strategy of stepping back and learning to pause, stepping back and waiting when would you like to go to lunch? And feeling, what does it feel like? Big decisions for me, at least as an overnight, I got to sleep on them. And if I'm being pushed into that, and again, this is a way I did it. If people are pushing me, well, I need to know now, then it's a no. Because I said yes so much in my past. And with my design, when I say yes, the heart, the willpower, the ego kicks in and goes, let's do it. But I was trying to spread myself so thin. So now it's like stepping back. And when I say yes, now the ego heart can step in and go, okay, let's do this. And so it's for me that big tool of just my strategy and authority. That's what I give the toolbox, the first part of it to, and each design has different strategy and authority. So for a projector, it's about being recognized and invited. And projectors are only about 20% of the world. They operate in a generator world, a builder world, pressure to do. and they're actually designed to be the guides of the world. So for me, most of my growth has actually come with relationships and collaborations with projectors. Right. So it's being aware of who I'm trusting into my life and who I'm listening to. So those are just some of the ways that I've been able to start to move into this.
Robert, how do you come into your heart space?
You know, and I'm going to tweak this just a little because I know heart space is what a lot of people are teaching. For me, it's actually it's my emotional space. So for me, my centering comes through my emotions. Am I clear right now? Am I emotionally clear? And again, this has taken me 4 years to even figure out what that feels like. Right. And then am I here? Am I there? Or where am I? And so for me, clarity is right here. It's just this kind of peaceful. It's just this kind of that peace. That allows me then to start making choices and decisions better. That's when my heart can kick in. That's when my other pieces can start to synergize as a machine, if you want to look at it that way, in conjunction and conducive with my design. Versus let me go push in and let me go this, or let me be pressured into a decision. So that's how I do it. It's more for me into my solar plex. It's more into an emotional space for me versus a heart space first. Okay. A little bit different than some of the things out there.
Okay, no, that's fine. So I want to get into your mind and break down exactly the steps. So let's say can you remember the last situation that you felt very angry in? What awareness and what mental and emotional steps did you take to bring yourself? What did you tell yourself in that situation, and how did you come out of it?
Yeah. So for me, anger has been probably the emotion that suppressed the most. One, I didn't want to be like, right? Because I saw anger as destructive. Right? That's in the middle of all those fights, that anger I equated to destruction. So I put that away. Right? Not going to be angry. So when it has come up in my past, it has just been that. It has been a total recreation, explosive, destructive, punching holes in doors, those kind of things. Today, I know I call it every energy has a signature. And anger has a signature. So for me, and I tell stories. So let me tell the story. The other day, I was at a Sunday. I got this Sunday group. It's guys and gals. We get together. It's really a contemplation group. It's a great group of people to just throw something on the table and discuss it. Because we've really I can disagree with you and still love you. But it's, when I start calling you out as stupid, that's where nope, hang on. So there's this guy there that he's very set in his ways, which nothing wrong with that. And for me, I don't believe in right and wrong. I don't believe we're here to judge. Now, I believe effective and ineffective. And that's how I move from judgment to creation. But he is he was he's coming at me, right? So you're saying, and I could feel this and it was anger, but it was a need to defend myself. Simple. I felt it. I acknowledged it. I didn't try to push it away. I acknowledged it. Because when we try to push it away, it just keeps growing. What we give energy to grows. I acknowledged it. Here it comes. And I just stop, push back on my chair, grabbed my coffee, stirred it, took a drink, just paused. And I didn't say anything. And it was I took the whole wind out of the sails. Because, anger begets anger, begets anger, begets anger, right? I mean, it was amazing because he was just all of a sudden you could just, and it was beautiful. So that's how I do it. I just had it the other day, again, over this relationship, something happened and there was a memory came up and I got angry at me. And I got angry at her. And I'm just here all by myself. And again, it was just stepping back, acknowledging the feelings. And then for me, and I've got an exercise I work with my clients, it's releasing the need to do anything with it. We don't have to do anything with it. And releasing the label to it. And then when you get to that label, you get to that level, you can really look at the signature of that energy, and it's just energy. It's the label we give it that makes it anger or makes it whatever. And if we're really able to do that, we can look at that energy then, right? We can look at that energy and go, okay, now what do I choose to do with it? Right? And that is, I choose to bring it in and use it for creation. I choose to, not going to serve me. See ya. So it comes down, but it's for me, it's pausing. That's the big, because if not, my mind gets involved and away we go, right? And down the path we go. Yeah.
Okay, so what you just explained there, is that the exercise that you give to your clients to just pick it up, not to pick it up and look at it. What am I going to do with this emotion?
Yeah.
So we're in control of the emotion instead of the emotion in control of
yeah,
us.
and really, yep, and really just acknowledge it. Just be with it.
Right.
And I don't, do I have to do anything with this right now? Because the mind, right, the undefined mind, they're not self is thinking about things that don't matter. So if it sees this, the first thing is, oh, we got to do something with that. We better go, blah, 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 blah. No, I don't have to. I don't have to. I can, but I don't have to. So it's releasing the need to do anything with it. And that's this thing, and it comes back to the divine masculine and feminine. That's law of polarity, right? Is the other side of anger is what? Joy or peace or whatever that is for you. And if I push anger away, then I can't experience joy. But if I bring them together, it comes as a whole then. It comes as one. And it's embracing that without judgment. That's the trick. Without judgment.
Robert, help me to understand. So you're in this situation and you can acknowledge the anger and you can pause and you can stop being angry in that moment. Now, does that anger get stored in the body, or do you need to go away later and maybe take a walk or punch a pillow or release it from, are you releasing it when you do pause, or are you storing it in the body?
My favorite response depends. So am I storing it for later release? Sometimes. Am I, my favorite things is, gosh, I got to go to the bathroom real quick.
I'll pause.
No, that, you don't have to pause. That's my tool is, if I'm in some kind of something, I'm like, oh, I've got to go to the bathroom real quick. And what that does is that separates me from that aura of that other person. And it allows me to come back and get centered and then maybe come back into the conversation. And what I find is a lot of times when I do that, it also separates me from their aura.
Yeah.
And I can come back and, do we need to keep talking about this? No, I think we're okay. Or we can talk about it in a different framework. Right. And then later on, and here's where I am today, is I'm finding now is that then releases it. Okay. That then, but again, for some, you may have to go find an outlet, right? You may have to go find an anger room, or you may have to, for me, and I see you posted my thing on my fire last night, firefighter for over 30, I love fire. And so fire is Mother Nature's cleanser. So last night, that's what I did. I sat out here and I did some work and I had a great dinner by myself and I started a fire and I just kind of I found myself just kind of throwing things into the fire. Just as this come up, and that's my way to start to just, in a way, calmly release that. I don't have to knock holes in doors anymore. I don't have to do that. Still there. That potential is still there. Yeah. But I'm finding myself now, as I'm more aware of that anger comes up, how do I effectively process it? And the first part of that is being aware of it and not suppressing it.
I love that. I think you've given some great tools there for next time any of us are feeling anger. Now, can we do the same with if you've got maybe feeling the urge to be dishonest, because you have shared with us that has been a theme throughout your life. So take us through the same process with that now, please.
Yeah, that's been, and again, that's been a journey over the last 3 months, compressed, right? I mean, it is, because there was this huge emotional impact of losing this relationship, made me step into committed to healing. And Richard Rudd, the creator of the Gene Keys, which is a companion to human design, says there's, until you commit to healing, I mean, commit, not just interested, but commit, healing really can't occur. So now what I'm finding is I know myself and what the truth is. Does the urge still come up? Yes. But again, Gemma, it's awareness. Oh, now I have a choice. See, that's the piece that in the human design system, Ra talks about how we're choiceless human beings for the most part. We make choices from the unconscious. It's bringing it into our awareness so we can make better choices. I still may choose to be a dishonest, but now I have the choice. And especially now, because I know the consequences. Even though I've had these consequences before, they've never had that impact that this one did.
Right.
And so I come back to that feeling of, oh, that feels horrible. So let's go this way. That's how I do it. And every person is going to have their own way, but it comes through awareness.
Yes.
And being aware of that.
Wow. So through your professional experience and also your personal experience, what can you say to men that maybe I haven't touched on so far through this interview? What are you seeing are the main struggles of men? What are their major wounds, their pain? What is the collective dealing with?
Well, I can share mine, and I think it is a lot. You know, there's a bonding that happens between mother and son. There's a bonding that happens between father and daughter, right? There's a bonding. And they're showing now some of that happens in the womb, but it definitely happens in those first 7 years. Those first 7 years are our emotional foundation. That's when we create this emotional intelligence. And for me, the memory that came up, the core wound that came up for me was I never really bonded with my mother. Like, and even so much, I learned that as a child in those first years, we lived in a small house with my grandparents, my great-grandmother, my mom, and me. Her and I slept on the couch in the same bed. So you would think that that would create a bonding, right?
Yeah.
But I've since, and she passed in 95. And I wish now I would have had this back then, right? I wish now, because now I've learned just how wounded she was.
Yeah.
I've learned stories of my grandparents because I didn't know them. They passed when I was young, but it wasn't, she didn't want to bond with me. I'm understanding now she didn't know how.
Right.
And so for me, I've carried that through in my it's like, come love me, come love me, come love me. And then when they do, it scares the hell out of me. So I push them away. And then, but for me to love and to be loved, I have to love myself first. And I have to bond with me. And I think that's one of the things that men are really struggling with right now, at least some of the ones I'm talking to, is they don't know who they are at their core. They have been trying to live in whatever society or conditioning has told them to be.
Yes.
And that's where, come into you, figure who that is in whatever modality you use. For me, I've used a couple of them. Again, a lot of my breakthroughs have come through plant-based medicine because it's been able to bring up these memories that I had stuffed, that I had protected myself, One of them was I was actually able to feel and be in a crib at 18 months old, listening to my mom and my real father argue what to do with me because I was neither planned nor wanted.
Wow.
18 months old. And when I share that story, people are like, oh, you can't remember that. Oh, those memories are there. It's the recall sometimes we can't do. But there's a memory that has run in my operating system throughout my life is please want me. Please want me.
Right.
So I became clingy, right? Instead of being that power to attract, when I got it, it'd be like, oh, I don't want to lose it.
Yeah.
And what woman, who wants that? Who wants clingy? And so that's been my journey, is that piece of that core wounding has been the inability to bond with myself and my mom.
What plant-based medicines were you using?
Well, two. There is a group out of Denver. I live in Colorado Springs, so Denver, that follows a shaman out of Peru, and honest to God, I don't know much about it. And people ask me, you don't know what you were talking about, right? It's like I trusted the person that took me, a coach, very good friend of mine, and I trust that she trusts the facilitator. Right. So each journey is curated into where do you want to go into your body? Do you want to go into your heart? Do you want to go into, where do you want to go? And then they have a different to take you there. So then 3 months ago, so that journey has been an instrumental part of my digging up that past to be able to look at it and either release it or keep it. Mm-hmm. Most of it has been releasing it, right? Releasing the baggage. 4 months ago, I don't know time, I was introduced to psilocybin. And that now I've done 3 of those. And that has now starting to like almost encompass, bring in and expand my truth, expand my identity, expand who I am. And that feels amazing. I mean, just as a matter of fact, I was at an event the other night and 2 events. One, I was at a networking event. Haven't seen this guy since before COVID. And we just started talking and he goes, what have you been doing? I'm like what? Why? What? And he goes, you just seem more at peace than I've ever felt you. I'm like, okay. And then the other night in the event, we're hanging around after the event, there was a lady sitting next to me and just out of the blue, she goes, I just love who you're being because I just feel at peace and clarity when I'm with you.
Wow, beautiful.
I'm like, wow, that was not my past.
Yeah.
But for me, that's what my divine masculinity feels like. Yeah. Peace, intimacy, love, nurturing, support. Some of my clients have told me one of my gifts is that I'm able to hold a safe, non-judgmental space for them to be authentic. Yeah. And trust me, I mean, people tell me stuff, I'm like, okay. Right? But I love that piece. That's my divine masculinity. That's what I'm bringing to the world as a divine masculine.
And definitely now you can feel yourself moving in the right direction. That's so rewarding, isn't it? It just encourages to keep going further and further on the path. Now, that last product you mentioned, I don't know what that is. Can you tell me what that is?
Psilocybin?
Yeah.
That's basically mushrooms.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And psilocybin is the scientific or but it's basically mushrooms. And I've become associated with a community called Sacred Tribe, and it's run by a rabbi, and he's actually bringing back the mysticism of Kabbalah, which is the mysticism of Judaism, which is about inner self, which is about oneness, which is about divine masculine, divine feminine, that kind of thing. So it's just been a beautiful journey.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I haven't been there myself, but I don't say I never will. So, it's good to hear.
And for me, it was different too, because I grew up in the age of drugs are bad, right? I mean, so when I was first introduced to it, I think the biggest thing I was ready because I tried I tried coaching. I tried all this other stuff. I was ready for something new. And that's what that gave me.
Great. Robert, have you forgiven your mother?
Oh my God. So yes, and moreover, forgiven myself. Because for years, and another memory that has come up for me was for me about 10 or 12. And again, a memory. And in this memory, I ask her, why do you keep us here? Because as a child, we know what we need. And I knew it wasn't that, right? You know what I'm saying? It wasn't this violence. It wasn't having to move every 3 months because blah. And she looked at me and said, because we need him. And at the time, like, I didn't know what that meant. And this came to me in a dream after a journey. And I called my coach and I'm like, okay, tell me what this is. And she goes, well, when was this? I said 60s. And she goes, well, do you realize in Colorado and in most states in the 60s, single women couldn't own a car, couldn't have a bank account, couldn't own a house without a man's signature.
Wow.
And I was like, and I still get, I mean, I just got goosebumps. I'm like, we did need him.
Right.
Years later, when she passed, just before she passed, I was with her in her last days. And I asked her again, because I wasn't where I was today, or I wasn't then where I am today. I asked her again, why did you keep us in this? Why did you stay? She had a brain tumor, so she had brain, and so she very slowly, she could articulate. And she said, because nobody else would have wanted me. Yeah. I was like, got it. All those years that I had blamed them for my troubles went. And I know now my stepfather was the same way. I've gone through with my father. He was not much different. I met him later on. Yeah, all that. But I think the biggest thing, Gemma, was me forgiving me for making those choices I did, because I made the choice. Unconsciously, I made a choice to suppress my true self. And so for me, it was really stepping back and forgiving me, or that little Robert, for doing the best he did. He only knew what he knew how to do. That's been the forgiveness work that I've had probably the biggest outcome in. And for men, I think that's one of the things that they shy away from, because, you know, but boy, that's the deep work. That's the deep work.
Definitely, you know, when we can start to see the wounds of our parents, you know, we can start to have a bit more compassion that, you know, we all do the best we can in each moment. And our parents and our grandparents went through the wars and the depression and a whole different life than, you know, we're experiencing now. I shouldn't talk because I had a really good question. And
that's right. It'll come back. Well, and it's the same way, you know, it's the same way if we look at the people we encounter. And my mentor taught me this. People work and live at their lowest level of awareness. And there's 7 levels of awareness. But mostly people live at fight or flight. They live in that animal level of awareness. And that goes back to that 7-centered being, the Neanderthal, fight or flight. And that's carried through to us. But we're 9-centered beings now. We can make choices and decisions differently.
Definitely.
But this is still, the fight or flight's still there, right? I mean, that animal brain is the only thing that has not mutated and progressed. So even when I encounter now, I just sit back and go, doing the best they can.
Every day. So I remember my question.
Good. I was open.
Yeah. Do you think that it was random that you were born into that family, or do you think that at a higher level you chose that for your emotional, evolutional growth?
I'll tell you, Gemma, that is an idea I've just started to wrap my mind around, is that we choose on how we come into the world and where we come into the world. And right now, you know, I've kind of pushed back this term light worker, right? Or healer, or those kind of things. But as I look at it, coming into the world and living through what I've lived through has been perfect for what I'm here to do today. And, you know, I belong to Toastmasters. I don't know if you've ever heard of that organization. It's a speaking, it's a speaking club, help people speak better. And we do this thing called table topics. And one of the topics was, if you could change one thing in your life, what would it be? And I had to really think about that. And the first thing that came up to me is I would absolutely change that I told the lie that ruined this relationship. I would absolutely do that. That would, right? And everything that I've encountered has made me who I am today. And today, my life's work is to transform the way humans behave. That's my life's work. So yes, I truly believe I chose to came into that. And I was gifted with a design. One of the things in my reading was that, I've got a gate of crisis. And I think that's what, and my fears is what had me survive that. Why didn't I become an alcoholic? Why didn't I commit suicide? Why didn't I survived it. I think why is to do the work I'm doing today. So absolutely. Yep.
Had to mute. My dog was barking. Sorry.
I heard him. That's okay.
Okay, so we'll start to wrap up now, Robert. Is there anything else you'd like to say to men out there about what you can share from your experience? And I love that you're in the midst of it all now. So you're very relatable. You're there saying, well, I'm only just coming into this awareness that maybe on some level I chose my parents. And this is it, the journey. When we're ready for the lesson, the teacher appears, right? So, and there's so many levels to this coming into awareness of our journey. So what are you going to say to men who are starting to come into awareness? What else can you say? Anything that you want to share to men about masculinity, about the journey that I haven't touched on?
Yeah, I think first is the concept, and I think it is a concept, if we can embrace, is that we're created perfect. We're created whole. We're created complete. We're created with everything we need to fulfill our purpose and destiny. And we're conditioned for failure. But when I talk to people, men especially, no, humans especially, about this perfect idea, I can just see them they just suck in. So if we can get that we're perfect, it means that everything has been perfect. Now, it may not have been effective. And that's the piece, I think, when we can look at that free of judgment, we can step into creation versus trying to change. So just guys and gals, I know there's women that listen to this podcast too, right? Is just be with the concept that I'm perfect. And just feel with what comes up for you, right? Feel the conditioning, feel with what comes up with that. That would be my tidbit to give.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Where can people find you, Robert? And I'll drop your links below in the description.
Perfect. So my website is www.focuspointsolution.com. You can email me at robert@focuspointsolution, or you can find me on Facebook. I do have Instagram, but I'm not real big. I'm mostly on Facebook. But I'm on Facebook as Focus Point Solution and then Robert Kittridge.
Wonderful. Any last words?
Yeah. If anything that I can encourage you or invite you to be is start to feel. Just really start to feel and suspend the need to do something with it. That would be my parting words.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Robert, for sharing your journey with us all. You've given us Great insights into your journey into the masculine mind, into feeling and emotions, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be able to relate and really, you know, get something to help their own journey. So thank you once again.
You're very welcome.
I'll finish the recording. You can stay on if you like. Bye everyone. Thank you, and I'll be back in a few days with another episode of Heart Warriors.